We said at the top of the newscast, it is a big day celebrating the history of Charleston and of African Americans' contributions in this state. The highly anticipated International African American Museum is finally open in the Lowcountry.
That's right. The museum takes visitors through a journey through the roots of African history and its global impact.
Our News 19's Darcy Strickland. Gosh, it's such a beautiful shot, Darcy, with what looks to be like moving screens behind you with videos telling stories. Tell us about the museum.
Andrea, JR, this is literally what visitors will see when they come through the front doors of the International African American Museum. A little history on the museum. This today was the reality of a vision more than 20 years in the making. 23 years ago, former Charleston Mayor Joe Riley said in his State of the City address that this part of Charleston, this land needed to be reclaimed and turned into something that everyone could be proud of. Gaston's Wharf sits right outside. The museum sits on the land where 45% of Africans who came to the United States enslaved came through that wharf. So today, a day filled with lots of emotion, from trauma to pride, but a day that once you walk into this museum, you leave looking at history very differently. Let's take a look at what is called the Carolina Gold and why it's been so important to visitors here today.
Behind us on this side, we talk about individuals. We pulled out just 2 or 3 actual stories of actual people who lived during this time to help folks kind of narrow down from that big picture. You know, as much as we haven't told these stories, there was always an effort to capture them and preserve them. Around the 1940s, we had the Federal Writers Project, and oral historians were sent into the Deep South to record the stories of folks who had been formerly enslaved. So the records are there, the notes are there, the audio is there. So when you come to the museum, we introduce you to a couple of these stories. And because this was a federal project, we actually have the ability to use their own voices and their own words inside the exhibitions. And so that has been, I think, really moving for a lot of folks, but also very connecting to be able to actually hear voices telling their own stories.
Even as visitors take time to experience and learn what it was like to be enslaved in South Carolina, there are galleries within the museum where the walls speak.
What you are looking at here is the port of arrival. So our 2 smallest galleries are the port of departure and the port of arrival. Very simple galleries. Black walls with names on them. This port of arrival has the names of enslaved peoples. Here we have our own records, and we have the records of many of the plantations here in the Lowcountry. And so we selected some names and put them on this wall. These are obviously American given names, not the names that folks came over here with. Because sometimes it's hard to make 12 million people into a person. This modern idea we have around saying people's names is one of the themes that we took into the museum.
One of the key themes also within the museum is the history behind the faith of enslaved people. Miss DeMent Jenkins, good to see you. We're going to bring her in right now and talk a little bit more about your role here at the museum and what it means to make sure that people understand that it's more than just about slavery in here.
Yeah, absolutely. So my role is the Director of Education and Engagement for faith-based communities. And so what I'm to do is, one, to engage the people around the world to make sure that they understand the sacredness of this site. And then to connect with our faith communities, religious institutions, theological institutions, to be in partnership with them so that we can do programs around faith, spirituality, and religion. Because what we want to people to know is that every history that's being told here, there's a faith element that's connected to it. And so our ancestors prayed all the time, they sang all the time, they always sought to whomever God they were reaching to make sure that life would get better for them by and by someday. And so we're at the by and by now. The things that they prayed for are coming to revelation today.
I understand how true that is, because literally one of the first exhibits you get to when you come through the door is the Praise House.
Is the Praise House. And we want people to understand that there are praise houses everywhere, on plantations, off-site of plantations, and that's where our ancestors would go and sing and fellowship and connect to their higher power, to whomever their God was. And so we can't exclude that when we're talking about history, because that's part of the history.
And my final question, 23 years in the making, how do you feel at the end of day one?
I am excited, a little tired, but I am excited because what I'm really excited about are those persons who sat at the table early on, the steering committees, who were the visionaries. They didn't have any idea where the money was coming from, where we were going to be built, but they kept the dream alive. And here we are today, 23 years later, in the building that they dreamt and prayed about.
And it worked. Every bit of it worked.
Every bit of
Ms.
it worked.
Jenkins, thank you so much for your vision and your hard work and everything that went into making today possible.